Good evening and welcome to the Spice Route. This episode is titled All My If Onlys Destroyed Me. Now let's begin. According to a verse from the Noble Quran, you will experience the consequences of whatever you have done. Now, for years, conspiracy theorists, books, articles have been saying 1% of the world's population has taken over the world. They consumed the remaining 99%. Is that true? Yes. But the question is this: what have the people of the world done that Allah Almighty has allowed this to happen? Because nothing happens without the permission of Allah, right? If Allah doesn't permit it, it won't happen. Our faith and creed require this. Both science and knowledge confirm this. This is true. So the question is, what has this community done, both Muslims and non-Muslims alike? Because, sustenance doesn't distinguish between faith. Even an atheist who curses and blasphemies against Allah Almighty morning and evening still receives their sustenance in the morning. Because Allah has declared His promise, I will give you your sustenance. I have determined it, and I will provide it. And without fail, this will be delivered, whether the person is a Muslim or a non-believer. But the question is, what am I living and what am I doing that such consequences are being allowed? We often hear the question among our young brothers and sisters: is Allah unjust since 1% of the world controls all the resources? This has been studied, and the types of questions people ask have been researched. That is, what kind of questions do people ask about their own lives? What are the types of questions humanity tends to ask? Because we are not concerned with the answers people give, but rather with the questions they ask themselves. The answers people give can contain personal, egotistical interpretations. They might be exaggerating themselves. They might think they possess something they actually don't. So their answers tend to be vague. What really matters is the question. The first rule in getting to know a person is the question they ask. What kind of question do they ask? This is a very valuable thing in understanding people. About 85% of the world's population asks the questions of the type why. Why is this happening to us? Why did this happen like this? Why me? Me again? Why is it like this? Why? And then we come across a verse in the Noble Quran to see what made the devil become the devil. The answer is that he is the one that turned to Allah Almighty and asked the question, why human? The devil was the first being in all existence to use the word why, and this became the root of it all. Now, 85% of the world is asking the question why. A verse will come up shortly that reflects this. And so, people operate based on this principle of causality. Therefore, Allah Almighty's permission for this 85% to experience poverty allows humankind the opportunity to see a certain truth. Now we come to the second part, the second type of question. About 14% of people ask, how? How did this happen? They move away from themselves, away from causality, away from being dramatic and overly emotional, and start getting caught up in the mechanics of how things occur. But only 1% of the world asks, what? What is this? Let me give you an example. You can even try this as an experiment. You walk up to someone, a friend who's sitting somewhere, and you place a glass of water in front of them, completely out of the blue. It could be sherbet, tea, coffee, whatever. The first reaction, the most common question is, why did you bring me water? Did I ask for it? Do I look like I needed water? And it goes on like this, the why question. 85% ask this. The second type of question was this: how did you know I wanted water? Where did you get that idea? They focus on the event, but only 1% of people say something like this: what should I do with this water? Because now that you've brought it, you want to say something to me. The first type of question is suspicious. Why? Why me? I didn't ask for this. That's 85%. These are the dramatic types, emotionally driven and difficult to help, but those that can be saved. Those that are still at the stage of the commanding self. The second is, how did you know I needed water? The second is at the level of causality. Only 1% says, now that you've brought the water, you're my friend, my parent, my sibling. You must have a reason. What should I do with this? Did you bring it so I can water a plant? So I can drink it? Clean something with it? Just to keep it nearby? Should I put a fish in it? What would you like me to do with it? Do you know what the problem we are facing in today's society is? No one is curious about the wisdom behind things anymore. Look, at the end of the day, everyone is searching for something beyond, something from the unseen, the mysterious. They want to understand the unknown, to have insight, to unlock deep meanings and analyze events. But don't even bother going that far. Just place a glass of water in front of someone. See what they will say. Will they become suspicious? If someone simply says to you, what should I do with this? Then that person is truly a person of substance. Because this means, I trust you. If you've brought me water, you must have a reason. You couldn't have brought it with ill intentions. You brought it for me. You brought it specifically for me. Do you know what is over? Loving the person in front of you is over. Everyone just loves themselves now. The one who loves themselves protect themselves. The one who loves themselves thinks about themselves. The one who loves themselves has to be right in every situation. Everything always revolves around them. And don't take this the wrong way. I'm not saying we deserved it and ended up where we are, but this way of thinking gives rise to this way of living. And with this way of living, Allah gives permission to the oppressor, and this has a consequence. Because there is a verse. Allah does not wrong you. Allah does not wish to wrong you. Look, you cannot evaluate what happens to the disbeliever and what happens to the Muslim in the same way. Our Sharia is also different. Allah Almighty has given a respite to the disbeliever. Do not mention my name. Let there be no law between us. Return back to me as you left. Here, the money is yours, the time is yours, the pleasure is yours, the girls are yours, the gambling is yours, the drinks is yours. Take it. Why? I didn't love you. I didn't choose you. You didn't bow down to me at Karbala. Now you are here. I don't even want you to remember me in this world. The other man intended to become a Muslim, and has Allah chosen him to become a Muslim? I didn't come here to live in peace, happiness, security, prosperity, comfort. I came here to become a real human. In other words, there's no way you'll get out of this without difficulty. You may ask, why are the disbelievers like this? Because Allah didn't choose to make these people into people of true character. But you said, Ya Rab, I ask you to make me a true human until the very end. Now, if you ask, even among the disbelievers, some experience hardship, some are poor, and even in America, about 10% of them live on the streets. What can be said about that? Go and talk to that person living in a tent in America. You will see the same principle of causality in him. Like I said at the start, Sustenance doesn't differentiate between a Muslim and a disbeliever. Even in the United States, that top 1% rises to about 4 to 5%. That's why it seems prosperous. Around 10% of the population lives on the streets. Roughly 80% are in the middle class. 60% are poor. About 20% are moderately well off. It shifts a bit, but it's the same idea. So there it's not 1% anymore, but something around 4%. So the underlying realities are still the same. And if you notice, even over there, the education system, especially basic mathematics, is designed to pull you out of causal thinking. Everyone, even the scientific community, tries to lead you toward asking the question, what is this? Because you can't do something out of suspicion. You have to be curious. And now we come to this point in society. So what has this society done to end up here? This evening, we will discuss one aspect of how these communities came to be in this state, focusing on a verse from Surah Al-Baqarah, where Allah distinguishes between the believer and the disbeliever. In that particular verse, Allah Almighty says, "The disbelievers will come and they will face their punishment." Now, I'll go a bit forward and a bit backward, but let's start with the word "if only." These disbelievers will say, "لو أن لنا كرة," if only we had another chance, so that just as they cut ties with us, we too would cut ties with them. They're saying this about their idols. We'll come to that in a moment. In this way, Allah will show them everything they did on the Day of Judgment. They will see it all in a state of regret and remorse, but they will not be able to escape the fire. In other words, those who say "if only" are the disbelievers. Now, I'm not trying to say that someone who says "if only" today is automatically a disbeliever. Please don't get me wrong. I'm just trying to explain what Allah says in Surah Al-Baqarah. Those disbelievers will come. The scales of judgment have been set up. They either didn't say La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah, or they lived in earlier communities and didn't believe in Prophet Nuh, Isa, or Musa. In that case, this person has become a disbeliever. And since they became disbelievers, says Allah Almighty, the verse says, "Those who followed will say." Now, who followed who? We're coming to that. They followed idols, and they will say, "if only." Now, this is what the disbelievers are going to say. There is no need to sigh and lament, because everything that happens on the Day of Judgment has an equivalent in this world. Allah cannot be trying to make me happy by making me understand what the disbeliever will experience in the afterlife. In other words, I can't derive joy from someone else's suffering. Just because someone enters hell doesn't mean I'll get triple the paradise. Some people might think this way, and maybe that's why every single day they declare someone as a disbeliever, but there is no such thing in Islam. Now, what I will understand is that when I look at the worldly life or what made these people say "if only," we see that a significant number of Muslims today also use the same group of words. And now I go to the life of the Prophet, peace be upon him, and in his life, we don't hear a single sentence such as, "if only you had done this," or "if only you hadn't done that." We don't hear this, not even once. Now, to avoid misunderstanding, let me clarify. The word "if only" here has three parts. The first kind of "if only" is feeling regret for a sin one has committed. This is not exactly an "if only" in this context. So saying something like, "if only I hadn't done that, may Allah forgive me," is an expression of regret for what has happened and is used idiomatically. But the second kind of "if only" is this. If only these things hadn't happened to me. Now, this isn't about something that the person themselves did. It's about things others did to them. For example, the boss promises a new salary. He says he'll give it, and then there's a problem with the payment, and in response, the person says, "If only I weren't here. If only I didn't live in this city. If only I didn't have this mother, this father," and so on. The third "if only" is entirely about the system. It gets to the point where a person says, "If only I weren't a human," and so on. Now, this kind of "if only" also has this effect. It constantly turns a person back toward the past, makes them look behind, and distracts them from looking ahead. And this not only causes people to waste time, but also prevents them from taking precautions for anything new that might happen. So if the point is to take the experience from every event that has already happened and look forward, then saying "if only" traps you in the middle. It locks you into replaying that moment again and again. How did we make that mistake? It's not how did we make that mistake, but rather, what was our mistake there? Forget about how it happened. Allah allowed it to happen and permitted it. So you ask the question, what was the mistake here? And once you find it, prepare for the next time. To say, "if only we had done this instead," wouldn't have changed the situation. What does it do instead? It ruins your mood and you won't be able to receive the spiritual benefit. Do you know why? Now we've come to verse 168. We'll go back up for the solution. But I'm trying to decipher how subtle and interesting the issue is. Allah Almighty says, "O people, eat from what is lawful and pure on the earth." Look, Allah, who described how the disbelievers will say "if only" at the scales, but still fall into the fire, immediately follows it with this verse, "O people," not Muslims or disbelievers, "eat from what is lawful and pure on the earth. Do not follow the footsteps of the devil, or he is your clear enemy." In that case, the root cause of whatever is making me say "if only" is that I've been following the footsteps of the devil. So what are the core traits of the devil? Jealousy, hatred, anger, grudge, stubbornness, gossip, lies, slander. These are the primary devilish traits. That is to say, when a human being who follows the steps of the devil is in one of these states, he begins to perform the devil's favorite act. Saying "if only" is a devilish act. That's why I'm stating it up front, to hammer the biggest issue into the mind. If a person in every situation turns back with suspicion and says, "If only we hadn't done it like that, maybe we should have done it this way," but it already happened. "If only you'd braked earlier, if only you looked at the traffic lights, would the accident still have happened? If only, if only, if only." Right there is exactly what the devil wants. And the reason the devil can get you to say that is because he has formed a link with you through those traits. So then, first of all, I need to get rid of this "if only," because a person who doesn't get rid of "if only" cannot take a new step towards tomorrow. They can't do something better, and they can't reach something more beautiful. Now we come to the later verses. How did those disbelievers who said "if only" end up in that situation? This is important so that I don't fall into the same problem by walking the same path. In verse 164, Allah doesn't start by describing the human being. He first describes the system. The Quran is truly remarkable. When you look at it in terms of sequence and context, It might seem like the connections are missing, like things are out of place, but the verses of Surah Al-Baqarah were revealed in a very comprehensive and structured way. So Allah is saying that in order to understand the situation, you first need to see the system. The verse starts like this, because the previous verse, verse 163, wrapped up a different subject. Now Allah is opening a new topic, so to speak. We're going to go from verse 164 to 167. In just 2 or 3 verses, we'll reach the if only verse. Allah Almighty says, "Indeed, in the creation of the heavens and the earth, and the alternation of the night and the day, and the ships which sail through the sea with that which benefits people, and what Allah has sent down from the heavens of rain, giving life thereby to the earth and after its lifelessness, and dispersing therein every kind of moving creature, and directing of the winds and the clouds controlled between the heaven and earth are signs for a people who use reason." Now, first Allah says, "O you who are about to say if only, now sit down. You see yourself as this great being, this grand figure. You say, I've dedicated my life to this. Well then," he says, "sit down for a moment. Take a seat somewhere, maybe a garden, a park, a corner of a mountain. Sit and lift your head up. Mountains, trees, clouds, rain, snow, water, wind. Can you see even a single trace of chaos among them? Look around at this universe. Look at the stars, the moon, the system itself. Can you spot even one shred of chaos in this system?" So, for instance, do clouds come along and one of them suddenly says, "I'm bored," and then crashes down randomly? Or is there lightning flashing from behind, rain pouring down without purpose? No, everything flows with its purpose. There is only one chaotic being on this earth, the commanding self, and he creates chaos only for the sake of worldly pleasures. The more chaos a person brings into your life, the more you can be sure they're still worldly. Because for those who have freed themselves from the world, there is no chaos. Everything is calm. So much so that when someone dies next to them, they say, "It's time, it was fate." They bury them, wash the body, complete the duties, and move on. For them, there is nothing chaotic in life anymore. It doesn't feel chaotic to them. Everything arrives in the right order as it should. Because Allah Almighty says, "Forget your own body, your own system, your own personal chaos. First, take a look. Can you show me a single instance of chaos outside of your own self?" There is something called chaos theory. Let's not get it mixed up. Chaos theory doesn't mean disorder. It means multiple chaotic elements moving together in harmony. What does that mean? Let me explain it like this. If I give you 4 different tires, one from a tractor, one from a car, one from a bicycle, and another from another type of vehicle. Then I give you an engine used in yachts, the steering wheel of a Porsche, and the gear stick from some other car. Can you build a working car out of that? You can't. You'd say, "This is chaos, it won't work." But Allah Almighty has established such a precise system, and this is why we call it a divine miracle. He has combined all of these parts and made a fully functional car, and it runs smoothly, flawlessly. Not a single flaw, not a single gap in the mechanism. That's why science exists. Could science exist if there were gaps? If water boiled randomly at 100 degrees one day and 105 the next, you wouldn't be able to write in a textbook that water boils at 100 degrees. It's simple. Nothing is chaotic, but everything has put its technique together with chaos. Allah Almighty says, "Look, do you see this system? Everything has been subjected to order. Everything comes after one another and complements one another." Now I come to the next verse. There are some who choose to take up idols besides Allah. They turn away from the system that Allah Almighty has established and look at the issue like this, he says. And they may think that there is something important within the system. They may think America is something great. They may believe the Rockefeller family is extremely powerful. They may see their mother or father as untouchable, as overly important people. They may think that without them, they'd be ruined. They may believe that if this or that doesn't happen, they'd be destroyed. Allah says, there are some who choose to take up idols besides Allah. Don't think of idols only as rejecting the declaration of faith, because the next verse is the part that worries me. Otherwise, I know that none of us, no matter what they do to us, would ever say that we reject Allah. May Allah never let us say such a thing. May Allah forbid. May He grant us to live with faith and die with faith. What I fear is the second part of the verse. They love them as they love Allah. Wait a minute. Does any other love besides Allah's love approach them or not? Allah brings it now. Despite seeing all the flawlessness in the system, O person who lines up all the problems in their own life in front of them, why don't you take a moment and ask yourself if there is something you love more than me? If I were truly the one you loved the most, you'd look at this flawless system and say, in such a perfect system, surely He wouldn't forget me. You'd say this even with the lowest level of faith. Think about it. If you were to join the military, even if there are 500,000 or 1,000,000 people, they don't forget you at morning roll call. They give you a duty. You might try to slip away here or there, but your name is still on the list. Some task finds you. You're either collecting leaves, painting a wall, doing something. You're not forgotten. The system is clear. Nothing gets lost. Look at it. Soldiers, commanders, entry and exit times. You say to yourself, there's a system here. You say to yourself, there's a system here. I can't just go around freely as I please. This isn't some place you can ignore or sneak out of. There's morning roll call, midday roll call, checks, inspections. Everyone has someone above them. There's a system. Even though humans built it, it still impresses you. Notice this. When people enter an airport, everyone straightens up. Why? Because you say, there's a system here. This isn't like my neighborhood. There are cameras everywhere, police, strict rules. If I don't follow them, they won't let me on the plane. So you say, hold on, this is a system, and you act accordingly. And this is what scares me. There's something out there that they love as they love Allah. And Allah Almighty says, those who believe have a stronger love for Allah. The ones who have no if-onlys have a deeper love for Allah. That's why they have no other idols in their lives besides Allah. And in their own lives, they don't see anything as chaotic. It continues, if only the wrongdoers could see. Allah refers to those who do not believe as wrongdoers. If the wrongdoers could see, when they witness the punishment up close, they would realize that all power belongs to Allah, and indeed Allah's punishment is severe. Allah Almighty says, all power belongs to Allah. Everything on earth is merely a cause. The clouds are subjected to His will, but the true cause behind them is Allah. It is He who has granted them power. And yet, the human being, so fragile, is always looking for something to lean on. But there is no door greater than the one we lean on when we lean on Allah. Those who live with if-onlys have leaned on other people. They have leaned on that which is material. They have leaned on money. They have leaned on their own intelligence. They have leaned on their past achievements. They have leaned on their medals. But whatever you lean on, know that its true owner is Allah Almighty. Today, the most difficult truth for mankind to accept, the one that pushes people toward a Pharaoh-like mindset, is this. Everyone thinks that they have a power in themselves. This is the critical mechanism to understand. We're not here to go hunting for disbelievers. We're trying to become good Muslims. And at the very start of becoming a good Muslim, you must demonstrate with your life that there is no power other than that of Allah Almighty. Then comes the next verse. Those who were followed will disassociate themselves from those who followed them. When they see the punishment, all ties, all connections between them are severed. So Allah Almighty is saying, whatever you saw as powerful. Now let's interpret this verse from a Muslim's perspective. He says, the disbeliever goes and finds himself an idol. We don't interfere with that. He'll come to this scale on the day of judgment and say, if only I could be sent back. But if you are a Muslim, says Allah, whatever you believe has power, whatever you think holds strength, in order to distance you from it, whatever those who are followed may be, everything you follow will sever its ties with you. Now, do you know what this means? Let me explain it in a better way so that we don't forget. Let's say you're a mother. What is the most precious thing in your entire life? It's the baby that is placed in your arms when it's born. It's so precious. The way it breathes, the way it suckles milk from its mother, its existence. You call it your life. You'd give your life for them. Then one day, you're holding the child in your arms and looking at them, you say something like this. Oh child, if I hadn't given you milk just now, what would have become of you? Oh child, now you're sick, you have a fever. If it hadn't been me staying up all night by your side, who would have stayed? Oh child, if your father hadn't brought money home now, hadn't brought medicine, who would have healed you? From that point on, this child will either die or struggle with illness. Allah will separate them from you, because you are associating power with yourself. And I know I'm speaking from the deepest point, but that's just so that none of us forget. There is only one power on earth. If you see each person or thing as a representative or a means of that power, then that's fine. Allah made it a means and the Father brought it. Allah made it a means and milk flowed from the mother's breast. Allah made it a means and a doctor happened to come across. Allah gave the healing and the child recovered. You need to construct this in your mind in such a way that these sentences always come out like this. And do you know what each of these kinds of people do? The child falls ill 3 days later. And one of the devil's best traits, he reminds you of the window that the gentleman left half open the day before. The devil is a very interesting being, and the brain works like this. The minds of people who recognize no power other than Allah imagine in a way that is beyond human. They don't see people, they see the system. They would directly see the bigger picture. Do you know who sees the small picture? Well, you left that door open 2 days ago. The child got sick that day. If only you hadn't left it open. Do you know that the real reason the child got sick was the immense power you saw in yourself while breastfeeding? Allah Almighty then made the strongest among you a reason for division. Yet you still think that the greatest cause within the cause is the father. Now tell me, is Islam a blunt religion? Islam is a very subtle religion. Truly a very subtle religion. A religion that needs a lot of thought. And I'm not the one saying this. The Messenger of Allah said it. The Messenger of Allah, peace be upon him, says, "Even if my shoelace is lost, I know it is from my Lord." Allah wants to tell me something. The matter is not the shoelace or anything like that. That was made a reason. Allah Almighty is telling me something. What is Allah telling me? And then the other one says, how is Allah telling me? Is it sunnah to tie the shoelace like this, or is it fard to tie it like that? That's the second group. And what does the common folk say? My shoelace snapped again. Me again. Why me? I've never had good shoes in my life. Why? Let me tell you why. For the one who sees power in their feet, their shoes become their affliction. This is such a high-level matter that Allah Almighty does not accept assigning power to anything other than Himself. He accepts the means because He says, I will sever their bonds if you assign any extra power apart from me. But the matter of means is a separate issue. Now it comes. Allah Almighty says, those who followed in this way have fallen into disbelief. They are the ones that will say, if only. To not be among those who will say this on the day of judgment, do not be among those who say it in this world. If you do not want to be among those who say it in this world, then in everything you see, try to understand what Allah is telling you there. We, on the other hand, move through every affliction we face within a life filled with regrets, thinking that power comes from someone else, thinking that we are forgotten in the system. How does a man decide to do something on his own? Now, imagine you go to a government hospital. There's nothing. The doctor is struggling there. The attendant is struggling over there. The place is chaotic. In the end, you realize that there's no one who can solve the issue. So you start to do it on your own. Should I put the serum here? Should I pull this from there? You start creating your own little world there. Sometimes they make these jokes and some people say, in our hospitals, everyone is a half doctor. You should ask how this happened. How did those attendants become doctors? How did the system get so bad that people ended up falling into that pit? In a place you don't trust, you will want to hold the rope yourself. You'd say, look, this place lacks security. Doctors can't reach anywhere. Patients are miserable. There is no medicine. I have to take care of my patient on my own. It's natural. You'd start. You'd open that cupboard, take some medicine from there. You'd look for a bedsheet yourself. You'd do it yourself. Why? Because you don't trust it and it's not there. Now Allah Almighty says, look at the world and tell me if there is anything you could lose trust in me. Say, O Lord, you made the sun rise late today, and it's uncertain if you will make it rise tomorrow. You said winter is coming, but it's 35 degrees. Your work is uncertain, O Lord. Allah Almighty manifests His name, Sabur, in such a way that there are 8 billion people in this world, and only 1.5 billion of them are Muslims. This means that every single day, 6.5 billion people in this world blaspheme Allah Almighty. But Allah is patient. What is this patience for? Is there any malfunction in the system? No. Do you trust it? No. Why? Because your greatest Pharaoh is yourself. You are the greatest Pharaoh. Let me explain it like this. One day, while Hazrat Hassan, one of the companions, was walking through the marketplace, they hired someone to recite poetry to insult him in a rather harsh way. This man was saying, he's this, he's that, he looks badly, he speaks badly, all in poetic form, right in the middle of the market. The man made eye contact with Hazrat Hassan, and of course he got a bit anxious, just in case something might happen. He waited to see what Hazrat Hassan would say. Hazrat Hassan took out some money and gave it to him. He said, "My nafs is even worse than what you described. You said little." He knew that this person wasn't the cause. This is what we call maturity. This is what we call being spiritually complete. This is what we call sainthood. And there's even higher than this, but we're expressing it in the simplest way we can understand. So can anyone tell me that Hazrat Hassan or Hazrat Hussein or Hazrat Abu Bakr or Hazrat Umar or Hazrat Uthman, any one of them ever said, "If only I hadn't done that on that day"? Let them bring just one example. It never happened. Why? Throughout their entire lives, they've never seen the system as chaotic, even though they were in the depths of chaos. Now, is there anyone who genuinely thinks that they may not have a house to sleep in tonight? I don't know where I'll sleep tonight. I don't know what I'll eat tomorrow. I don't know if I have food or not. Will I be on the street? Will I find a hotel room? Is there anyone like that? Whether a little or a lot, we still have something. The companions had nothing. Just go, leave. Go where? Just go. Let's see one of them complain along the road, saying, "Look what they did to us." This is spiritual strength. You know what it is? If Allah willed it, then He has a purpose. If He has a purpose, He has something to say. If He's saying this to us today, He's about to do something with us, or have something done through us. Will I be within that or not? Today, however, everyone I ask is in fear. People say, "How do you see the economy in the upcoming year?" Honestly, up to this age, He hasn't left me hungry. If He wants to, He will. He hasn't left me without clothes on my back. He hasn't taken my life. I'm still breathing. Until now, I've lived. And honestly, the next year will pass just the same. I hope for better for the community of Muhammad. If He gives it, He gives it. If He doesn't, that's up to Him. We just haven't been able to accept that we are subjected to the will of Allah. But don't I have free will? Your free will is only as much as submitting to His will. Since you haven't tasted this yet, you keep holding your head high, analyzing sentences. You're far from the truth. Allah Almighty also tells us where all these if only lives will lead us to in the end. So these people said, if only. It becomes clear that this is what happens when you follow in the footsteps of the devil. The 169th verse. He only commands you to do evil and fahsha, and to say about Allah that which you do not know. What is fahsha? Fahsha means a vile act. It's not the same as how the word is commonly used today. In other words, taking someone's right is also fahsha. In Islamic terminology, fahsha has become synonymous with adultery or fornication. But in truth, taking someone's right, not helping someone when you're able to, doing wrong, thinking evil, all of these are part of fahsha. At the point where society is today, is there anyone who has a family and a life free from fahsha? No. Why is that? Saying if only. And why is that? Because you think power comes from you. So what does Allah do to someone who lives with if onlys? He tests them with whatever they believe power comes from. A man is very wealthy. Allah Almighty takes his money. He wakes up one morning and it's all gone. There are two reasons behind it. First, Allah might be testing you temporarily to see how you react. Second, if you were someone that said things like, if it wasn't for the money, you'd see what they'd do to me. And Allah wants to take your life as a Muslim. That money will be taken from you. In other words, look at the things you once loved dearly, then lost, or that had broken. Chances are you believed the power came from them. Power is from Allah. This sentence may seem simple, but its subtlety is very extraordinary. Being a Muslim is interesting. A disbeliever receives provision individually. Muslims, however, do so as a community. Disasters don't come collectively, but we are subject to a Sharia in which blessings do come collectively. There's mercy in this, but don't forget, whatever you believe that power comes from, that's the truth. This doesn't mean that we shouldn't take precautions. No, take only precautions, but after taking them, don't forget that the true owner of those precautions is Allah. If you forget that, you will collapse, and that's if He loves you. If He doesn't love you, that will stay with you. But if it's taken, rejoice. That too is divine mercy. Therefore, it may seem very difficult to relate this to the if-only sentences of today, but unfortunately, a society that lives on regrets cannot do anything for the future. Why? Because there is a power he clings to, he cannot let go. Allah Almighty will take him to something greater, to a bigger opportunity. When a person is unaware of this, they only desire that current position. This is not about being content with what you have, but being content with the degree of what you have. Whereas the real essence is to be content with Allah's degree. You are content with what you have, yet there is something beyond this, something greater, more essential, more certain. But you say, no, living with this much power is enough for me, and you even claim to be happy with it. A Muslim cannot be content with little. They are grateful for what little they have. Why should I be content with little? If I am a Muslim, shouldn't I be serving more, running more, doing more for others, reaching more people? Yes, but now you are saying, I am happy here in this world. You who are happy in your own world, don't only be happy in this world, but also consider if you will find happiness in the next. Otherwise, let's see if some of those if onlys will fall upon us or not. Now, this is such an interesting point that it requires everyone to reflect on it from their own perspective. How can I know if there is something that I love more than Allah? If I believe that I am keeping myself standing with my own hands, or that it is keeping me up, don't believe it. Everything will go. Everything, including yourself. This is an easy prescription, but still 99% of society will not follow it. That's why Allah allows the 1% to exploit us and our resources. Because the system works like this. So when a person asks the what question in the system, everything changes. But today you look around and see that Muslims are unhappy. Some people question why they don't see anyone smiling in the streets of our country. To this, some answer because of economic conditions. They respond as if wealthy people are walking around with happy faces, as if they are very polite, while the poor are the ones with sad faces. However, this is not the case. There are wealthy people too, and their faces are as sour as vinegar. Sorry, but the face of someone with a commanding self is always sour. They sulk about everything. Why? Because the person is not content. Even the wealthy are not content. What are they not content with? He's bought a plane and he's after someone else's plane. He still has dreams. He is still in that dream world. And they always ask on TV shows, is there anything in your life that you wish was different? Now, there are two types of answers. One says something worldly, while the other one says, I do not have any regrets in my life. That sounds nice, but why? Is it because of the commanding self? Or is it because you are content with Allah's will and because you know that power comes from Him? The issue comes down to this. While people have separated religion and state affairs, they have also separated religion from daily life. We have separated our religion from our life so much that people don't know what it means to seek Allah's pleasure in the market, in the bathroom, in the bedroom, or in traffic. A woman, a man, a person is crossing the street. This happens a lot in Turkey. Cars don't stop to give way to pedestrians. Each of these people are Muslims, but you're not a true Muslim yet. Why? Because you're in your car and that person crossing the street is cold, burning, getting wet. And you're just going to your destination, but they're cold, burning, getting wet, and all you think about is yourself. And every time someone tries to give way to a pedestrian, someone from behind honks and says things like, come on, hurry up, why aren't you moving? This is very frustrating because that same person will get out of their car, go to the mosque, and later in the evening, they'll talk about justice, law, and how their rights are being taken away. My friends, we are the ones that brought the system down, and we are the ones who will raise it back up. The one who doesn't recognize any power other than Allah is the person who shows mercy to all of Allah's servants. If you know that your only power comes from Allah, then you will try to please Him only. A person who seeks only Allah's approval will not bow down to anyone else. Now a guy says, I've never bowed to anyone in my life. We ask, do you pray 5 times a day? They reply, saying, what's that got to do with this? If your forehead doesn't touch the ground in prostration, you will bow down to everyone. Every person whose forehead doesn't touch the ground has a price. But a person whose forehead touches the ground and who has truly believed, who knows the value of rights, justice, humanity, and who is merciful, their price cannot be paid. You cannot buy them. You cannot make them bow. You cannot make them do what you want. But if they don't pray, you can make them do whatever you want. There are 100 million manipulations and 1 million diabolical systems. It's that simple. Only those who recognize no power but Allah are truly polite. The others are polite in their saloons, polite at their weddings, polite to the guests in their own homes. So unfortunately, these people don't give way to those crossing the road. The same thing happens in the markets. Choose one tradesman from among them. You can try this test too, to understand the state of people and to understand yourself as well. What are we looking for? X. Is there a shop? Yes. Go to the person selling X and ask about its color. Let's see if they'll point to the neighbor. This was tested in a market in Turkey, and none of them referred to each other. Now gather them all together, and they complain about the system. Tradesmen, you don't support each other. You don't look out for each other. You're not Muslim tradesmen. What happens when you become a true Muslim? Everything changes from top to bottom, and in a very short time. There are hundreds and thousands of examples, and this has been the case throughout history. In summary, to avoid saying if only, it is essential to recognize that there is no power other than Allah, and this is the formula. So that's the end of this lesson. May Allah be pleased with you all. Thank you for listening. See you all next time, inshallah. Take care.